Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So on the Zen market we have an actual pretty good deal with a companion bundle and companion choice pack. Basically you buy this and you get a bunch of upgrade tokens and you get a choice of one of those following companions. And so I wanted to go and test each and every one of those companions, so I have done so, and let's go over my results. But before we get started, just because I might buy something here or there doesn't mean you should. The decision is ultimately yours, and in my opinion, yes, this companion pack is pretty valuable. It's got some of the best companions there, but ultimately you can do just fine without any of these, buying much cheaper ones. Whether they will give you as good a benefit as these, perhaps not, but ultimately your character's built up of all little tiny bonuses, and in the end, if you're looking at like 7.5% damage versus 7.5% of a certain offensive stat, it's very minimal, and only for min-maxers would I consider really spending a lot of resources, especially if you're to spend money on this game and to spend that Zen. You're best off doing it very wisely. I can't advise you exactly because everybody's at a different level in the game. So let's start things off with the Cunning Mimic. I've said it's garbage, and well, the test results proves it. You can see only just about nearly 11,000 encounter DPS, which is the number we're going to use to compare all of the companions. And you can see as an example, your pseudo dragon can deal upwards of nearly 40,000 encounter DPS. Now, these tests are done against this Chult dummy right here. So it's primarily testing their single target damage capabilities. Otherwise, its AoE damage does not seem like much at all. It can't hit, like, say, like this dummy just over here. So I'll consider his AoE damage as pretty negligible, if he has any at all, which I actually highly doubt. And otherwise, all things considered, his abilities has nothing special about them. He does have like a threat ability, taunting foes, but it seems absolutely useless. It doesn't seem to draw any threat whatsoever that I can discern. He does have the ability of Cunning Hunter, which will increase your stats depending on your role additionally. And yes, it can be decent, but for a min-maxer, Forte is not usually the best way to go. Verdict, this companion would be a waste of your Zen. Next up, we have the Tutor. And I've said in previous videos, he's good. He's a very good companion just to have as summoned because of his ability to have class in session. You can see that just here. When you're in a party, he will cause everybody to gain a boost of 5% combat advantage, and that is an offensive stat helping everybody deal more damage, and that's a full 5% that you can rely on. For a min-maxer, that is quite a significant amount, and definitely makes the Tutor worthy to have as a summoned companion, but his damage sucks. You can see that right here with only nearly like 5,000 encounter DPS. Again, garbage when you compare that to like 40,000 with, again, like the pseudo dragon. And you can see this list. I haven't gone and tested them again for module 24, but so far nothing's been reported that has anything changed, and I haven't really found anything. So I'm not going to test them all just yet. Again, I'm going to wait until they potentially make their said companion changes, which could be module 25. It could be, who knows. And with the Tutor dealing absolutely garbage damage, I'll have to say he's a companion you want to have on a support, so a tank or a healer, and thus he would buff up the group's damage. His offensive power is, not great, because again, it only lasts for 10 seconds, and thus you can't really rely on it. You could make an AoE build around it where you're always hopping between groups of enemies, but I just don't think it's something that's worthy of upgrading for that benefit. Again, he's only good as summoned. So yes, Tutor could be well worth the option from this pack if you're a healer or tank and want to help support your team. Then we have the Helmite Paladin Ghost. Now the thing that's special about this guy is he has the ability to have Helmite Seal, where he will cause a seal on the enemy to heal all your allies whenever they attack it. 3% of their maximum health, which is not that insignificant when you consider as a DPS character, you're hitting that boss very often. Of course, it will depend on classes, but ultimately it is one of the best companions for healing, for helping you heal your party. So again, it would be a companion you would run as a healer to support your group. I wouldn't recommend running it in solo content because again, it's only going to be good in boss fights where you have that one tanky enemy who is going to have that seal. And well, we've tested him and we can see his damage is again pretty garbage, 10,000 encounter DPS. However, we want to have a look at his healing capabilities. So we went here in the Master Temple of the Spider and I used him, or my healer used him in the last boss fight, Nami. A big thank you for her for doing so, sacrificing some other companions she may have used instead of it. And we can see this was the healing that it did. For that 4-minute and 20-second run, healed for just over 6 million with the Helmite seal. 526 hits. Not bad, all things considered, especially when you get to the later phases of this boss fight where everybody takes like a lot of dot damage. And so that is where this companion would shine the most. When everybody's taking a lot of damage over time, that is when having that extra support will help. But keep in mind, it's not going to be a lot of healing. Consider 6 million versus the amount the healer actually did, which was nearly 100 million. About 7% of her overall healing. So not great, but it's that little bit of extra support. And in my opinion, it's not really worth your Zen. It's not going to be a big deal. And again, you're usually better off just running as a support, a healer or tank, a damage buffing companion like the Tutor instead. Then we have the dedicated Squire, and he's another very good healing companion with its Smite ability. And here again, we ran this companion to test its healing abilities within the first boss of Master Temple of the Spider. That first boss has lots of ads. People are running around the place like headless chickens and do take quite a lot of damage, especially when you blow up a barrel. Just keep in mind, you have to be near him in order to actually receive that heal. Personally, I would run him in solo content if you really need that extra bit of healing. However, his damage is not too great at only just over 8,000 DPS. Yeah, with his smite. But we can see in that first boss fight, he healed for like 5.5 million. Again, Nami's pet. I would consider that as a fact because people spread out quite a lot, especially if you have some ranged DPS, they might not be near the boss. And again, his healing will only really be given when you're close. He does have his other ability, which is like the cleansing touch, but that didn't heal for a whole lot. And in total, that's like 6.3 million. So pretty competitive with the Paladin Ghost. I would say the dedicated Squire is probably that little bit more reliable to just keep everybody continually healed a bit. But again, we can compare against the actual healer's healing, and you can see she healed for like 150 million in that fight. Yeah, so this dedicated Squire only healed for like less than 5%. So again, not really a big deal. And you'd be better off, again, just running a support companion for increasing everybody's damage. That's usually the case. Then we have Minsc, and he also sucks with DPS. Yes, a bit better, like 15,000 encounter DPS, but again, nothing compared to like the 40,000 you're getting from these top companions. What does make him very good, however, is the defense power. As a defensive power, he's increasing your damage. So if you run multiple characters, I would get him. If you don't run multiple characters and you just have the one character you want to play, then I would generally just get better off getting him from the auction house. He's probably only maybe 800k. Again, it depends what platform you're on, and you would slot that bigger they are in your defensive slot right there, giving you a damage buff against everything that's somewhat tanky of threat. Generally, you run it in your boss fight build, and it'll give you the full 8.6%. So very nice just for that. Again, account wide, so you can have that on all of your alt DPS characters as well. Unfortunately, it's only epic. There's no real higher rarity you can get anyway. Next up, you have the Spine Devil. This companion, again, is a really good damage support companion. He can cause the enemy to be vulnerable. Again, single target, so only going to really be effective against bosses. Again, he'll throw his pitchforks about, and once he goes and hits that enemy with his pitchfork, you can see he uses it right there, and then you get the debuff. It's actually sometimes just a chance, and overall, he's not as reliable. There you go, that's the debuff right there. It lasts a full 10 seconds and you'll increase your damage by 10% against the enemy. Unfortunately, he can't really sustain it 100%, so again, not too reliable. There's the pitchfork again. So if he gets the rotation done correctly, he can have that up for the majority of the fight, and I would definitely recommend somebody have that, especially in a trial. I wouldn't rate him as high as maybe the Tutor with having the continual increase to everybody's damage, nice and reliable, but he is up there amongst the top of increasing everybody's damage. Again, a companion, when we look at his damage, that you would mainly use on a support. However, his damage, all things considered, isn't that bad. 27,000 encounter DPS. Compare that to the top, he's mainly missing like 12,000 or so. So not the worst you could run on a DPS character, and also pretty nice damage support then as well. Something to add though would be that the Spine Devil's equip bonus has the ability to, on a 10% chance when you use an encounter, release a hail of spikes against up to 6 foes within 15 feet for 75 magnitude damage. And so if you're a rogue with Path of Blades, which basically is considered casting an encounter power on each pulse, which you can abuse for already, the Wild Hunt Rider, you could gain a decent chunk of damage through that. I personally have not tested. I've seen people saying that it's good, but again, I don't know. And I may try and get my hands on this for my rogue, and we can do some more in-depth testing and see how good it is. But again, it would only be good for AoE damage. I highly doubt it's good for single target compared to like flat bonuses you would have normally just to make your bigger hits bigger, but we shall see. And so just a heads up on that Spine Devil might be better than I've let it on to be, especially if you're still sticking with your rogue, which is still a very good DPS class. It's just a bit hurting with the latest dungeon and being melee. So let's move to the Neverwinter Knight. Again, what makes this companion special is its offensive power, increasing everybody's damage by 7.5%. Again, these stats are when you're on Mythic, because I have this knight already just here. I use him on all my DPS builds, as that's just a flat, reliable boost to your damage. He's excellent for that purpose. Again, being account wide, you can have him on all your alts then. Many people might already have him as account wide, like myself from previous events, so for me it's not an option to get him there. I already can get him on all my alts. But for people who miss that, well, this is the option right here. As for how good he does in damage, well, again, not great. About half as much as the top at only 19,000 encounter DPS. And otherwise, he can increase everybody's survivability by a little bit, increasing their defense by 2%. Definitely something that's to be noted, but most content won't really require you to need that to, let's say, survive certain mechanics. It is an option to increase people's survivability. Lastly, we have the Mercenary, which has, yes, its Mercenary's discipline, power and combat advantage, not bad offensive stats. Generally, power, you want to kind of avoid that as like one of your equip bonuses, because that's generally the easiest thing capped out, and so you don't really need the extra percentages here from stats. And so I wouldn't recommend it too highly in that regard, but its damage, again, is not too great. Only 17,000. So overall, this companion pack, mainly what you want to get from it is the Tutor, Minsc, Spine Devil, or the Neverwinter Knight. The one that does the highest single target damage there is actually the Spine Devil with 27,000. Keep in mind again, you do not have to buy this pack if you want those companions. You can go to your auction house and you can buy them separately. People will open the pack, they'll claim one, and they'll sell it. Alternatively, you can actually just buy the pack itself, but it will set you back. You can see like 3 million Astral Diamonds on the PC marketplace. The benefit of buying the pack here is you also get some companion upgrade tokens, but if you're saving for the trade bar discount and have trade bars on hand, well, you can get those companion upgrade tokens for very cheap. Ultimately, if I was a DPS player, It's a hard choice between Minsc and the Neverwinter Knight. You can see I use both of them. Which one would I rate higher? The Knight probably, because you can use that in AoE as well to gain the full benefit of 7.5%, and you're always going to have it. And then if you're trying to support the team for extra damage, there's the decision between the Tutor and your Spine Devil. Ultimately, if you're running with random groups, the Spine Devil is probably better because ultimately the Tutor is going to give its bonus no matter what you're fighting all the time. It can be very good, but people have to build around it and be aware that somebody's actually using it. If I have 90% combat advantage, this extra 5% is absolutely wasted. You need people who are aware you're using it and are going to build around it. That is if you're running in endgame. If you're just running random queues, most likely you're going to get at most people who don't have 90% combat advantage and thus can make use of those extra stats to increase their damage. As long as, of course, they position correctly and actually make use of combat advantage damage. Otherwise, the Spine Devil is only good against bosses. So some hard decisions there, and hopefully I've helped somewhat. Personally, I would go with the Tutor unless you're in an end game group, and a Spine Devil would help you a bit more against those specific bosses, especially if you're running with people who already have like capped combat advantage. Just keep in mind again, you do not need to buy this pack. It's a very nice deal, but again, it's entirely your choice. And personally, I could get this pack for only 750 Zen using my coupon here from the On the Wings of Dragon campaign, and I could go and buy it for only 750, as you can see there. Unfortunately, you can't get any lower because there's already like a 30% discount on that, and that coupon originally came from, again, On the Wings of Dragon, just here. If you missed it, well, you missed it. The campaign is ended. I probably won't buy the pack as I don't need anything in there right now. Maybe I'll regret that down the road, but I don't see why I should get it now, as again, people can also sell it on the auction house, so the option is there if I really need it, and people will sell those. You can see there's already quite a number of them there, just including these legendary ones, which have a whole different assortment of things. Again, special thank you to all of these channel members for their added support, and we'll see you guys around. Bye for now.